Now the key thing about this is that when you define your goal at the highest standard, it's like in 2004 we defined our goal as wanting to win the gold medal at the Olympics. Now not just win a gold medal but break the world record in the process. And at that time the world record in the 8 was 5 minutes 22 seconds. And we came close to breaking it in a previous regatta, but we were in a new crew. We'd only been together for 3 months, and we turned up at the Olympics knowing that we were going to get fast following conditions. And at the very beginning of our time together as a crew, we said, right, we've got 3 or 4 months to prepare for this. We need to set our standards at the highest possible level. And we actually said that if we're going to win in fast conditions, 5:21, 5:20, that's probably not going to be the winning mark. We have to do something which has never been done before. And we set our goal as rowing a 5 minutes 16. We figured if we could row 5:16, not only would that achieve a phenomenal world record, but it would also, most likely, win an Olympic gold medal. Now we spoke about that, and then we sort of sat around for a while and we spoke about, well, how are we going to do it? And what it meant for us is that every time that we trained, and this is the critical thing, it's all about the standards that you set. The critical thing is that when you turn up to practice, what's your focus? Well, is it just going through the motions? Is it just getting out there and kicking the footy around and having a good time, working up a bit of a sweat? No, it's not about that at all. It means that when in rowing we rate a certain number of strokes, so we train at rating 20 or 22 or 24 or 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38. Over speed ratings are above 40. What speed should we be doing? Every time we trained to a specific speed. Now, when we first started trying to train to this speed which we extrapolated from that 5 minutes 16, the good thing about rowing, not the same as your sport, but the good thing about rowing is that you can measure everything. And so when we trained, we were trying to row at a certain speed all of the time. Now, did we achieve that straight away? No, we actually didn't. And it took us quite a long time, but the key thing was we never made excuses. We just realized we needed to start doing this better. We needed to be more effective. We needed to be more efficient. And the funny thing started to happen. That translated to everything that we did on and off the water. And what started happening? One day, we actually started hitting our splits. And then that became the standard, that we were willing to accept nothing less than that. Now, in the end, we raced our heat at the Olympic Games. It was our first race as a crew internationally. Myself and 3 other guys, we hadn't raced internationally since 2000. Pretty rare. No one else in the event was in that position. And we broke the world record in our first row together. And we were on target to row our 5:16. In the final, it didn't work out as well. We didn't quite execute as perfectly as we needed to. And like I said before, it only needs to be off by maybe 0.2 or 0.3%, and that was it. We come away with the bronze medal. That's not a disaster. And that's the thing. Can you have a fraction subpar performance and still come away with a phenomenal result? Because that's the thing. Like, if you've trained at that standard the whole time, so hopefully what it means for this club is that because they've set their standards at that level to win that premiership within a certain number of years, what is that going to mean when every player turns up here to practice on day one? What does it mean in terms of how they conduct themselves off the field? And this is the most important thing. There is more that you can do off the field to undo your performance than you can do on the field to make up for it. Would you agree with that? And you see that in the papers all the time too. Okay. So that's really at the crux of setting your goal at the highest possible level, but obviously it has to be realistic as well. Because if it's not, people just won't subscribe to it or buy into it. And so you have to create the opportunity for people really to believe in that outcome. Okay? But for me, it comes down to those values and behaviours and those standards. The next thing when we talk about roles, what we're really talking about here is, and a lot of this conversation was inspired conversation with the coach, and we said, when you replace a player on the field, what are you replacing? Are you replacing a skill set? Are you replacing a full forward for a full forward, or a centre half forward for? Are you replacing the ruckman for another ruckman? What are you actually replacing? Well, obviously you are replacing a skill set, but is there more than just a skill set that individual player has? So what other things are you replacing? Are you replacing someone who is a real leader on the field, who talks a lot to everyone else, who organises things? Are you replacing someone who is a great encourager of other people? You're replacing someone who is a phenomenal team player who shows awesome support for the people around them. You know, what are you actually replacing? Because it's really easy to replace a skill set, but it's nowhere near as easy to replace everything else that they do. When we talk about roles, you know, this is in your notes, but broadly you can classify them into 3 distinct areas. You can think about roles in terms of those players that are doing and acting. And you think about that in terms of when you turn up, your team turns up to practice, you've got players that, what do they do when they turn up? They make sure everyone else is right. Guys, we're ready to go. Let's get started. You know, are people running through the line or are they just running to the line? Who says if they're not? So who pulls people up on their behaviour? Like, who is that person that holds everyone else accountable? In all of your teams, you will have people who do that. Would you agree? And then you'll have people who really don't like doing that. Now, when we talk about team dynamics, what we're really talking about there is how all of these different personalities mesh together or not. Now, we need that diversity, because what happens if you had a team full of people and you didn't have any of these doing or action roles, who hold others accountable, who make sure that there's a great pace being set at practice, who are leading from the front? What if you don't have those roles on your team? Likelihood of success? Not great. You actually need those players, but how many do you need? What if you had a whole team of them? What would that look like? I can tell you what it would look like. It would be a lot of arguments. There'd be a lot of conflict over, you know, well, they don't actually like being told what to do, those people. Okay? By the same token, if you have too many, you know, thinking and problem-solving roles, okay, too many of those intellectual types who like to process information and really be analytical about all the data and consider all of these options. Now, you need some of them, but you don't need too many of them. Okay, so you need a healthy mix. And the last one is the ones who look after people and feelings, so those players that are very relationship-oriented. Do you need them in a team? Yeah, what do they do? What's the value that they bring?
Bring people together.
They absolutely bring people together. Okay, they're conflict averse, they're relationship focused, they enjoy harmony, they look after others, they have a care factor for other individuals, and they've got a very important role. And so what we're saying is that when you look at your team, like, everyone has to play a role beyond just their technical role. All right. Okay, now the last thing, or the second last thing we're really looking at here, which leads into our final model, is interpersonal relationships. Now put your hand up if you've ever had a season which was completely derailed because your players didn't get along well. Yeah, most people, all right? Everyone else who didn't put their hand up is probably not telling the truth. All right? I've been in part of that too. As much as I know about this stuff, where it really developed my understanding of this was in some of the rowing crews I was part of. You know, where me as a team member had specific clashes with other guys in the team. And I thought, these guys, they turn up and they do these things to annoy me. Yeah. I've got my own ideas about how things need to be done, and these guys are turning up every day. They must get out of bed thinking, man, how am I going to annoy Bo today? What do you think? Do people think that way? Absolutely. Actually, they don't. I don't think they do now. You know? You might think that they do. But what I learned about that is that if you have someone who is really goal-oriented, you have someone who's relationship-focused, all of these different types of people, when you talk about what your outcomes and goals are, the reality is that we all have a different path to getting there. But just because we have a different path doesn't mean that our paths or our behaviours are wrong. They may not be appropriate for the specific time, but people generally have the right intentions. Yeah, you'll have a minority that maybe don't, but they're the ones that don't stay around at your club, hopefully, because they don't fit your culture.